We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including the possibility of seeing the New York Rangers make some big blockbuster moves this season. Of course, they're a team that has some big decisions coming, especially with star forward Artemi Panarin. Could they be making some changes to that roster as the year goes along or into next year, which may see them go after some other top stars like a Jason Robertson or a Marty Natchez? We'll discuss the possibilities there. Plus, we have word that the Calgary Flames are in the goaltending market for a backup goaltender. We have news from the NHL waiver wire. Another player re-signing with the Florida Panthers. Player safety has issued a couple of fines to a couple of players, including one for Vancouver and Utah. A lot of NHL rookies scoring their first NHL goals this weekend as well, plus some injury updates coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in today's video. We do have a little bit more activity on the NHL waiver wire here today. The San Jose Sharks have placed a couple of players on waivers. We'll find out tomorrow afternoon if they've been able to be cleared and reassigned, or if indeed they'll be going to another NHL franchise. But that includes defenseman Lucas Carlson and Jack Thompson. The Sharks are going to be an interesting team to watch this year. They have a lot of veterans. They have a lot of rookies. We finally saw Sam Dickinson get into the lineup. We're hoping to see Michael Misa. And they have a lot of guys that are kind of, they're short-term bases that are looking to make an impact. So obviously they have more than enough players with at least some degree of NHL experience. So we'll see if either of these guys get picked up tomorrow or if they'll be heading down to join the Barracuda. We also said as I mentioned, we have another player re-signing with the Florida Panthers. Players that go there seem to have a lot of success and don't want to leave. And really, can you blame them, especially for the ones that have been there for a few years and have won multiple Stanley Cup championships? This one is going to be for Jonah Gadjovich, who found himself a home on the fourth line with the Panthers, has extended for 2 more years at $905,000 per season. So obviously it's a pretty team-friendly deal. If you can get a fourth liner locked up under $1 million that can contribute and be a regular, give you some physical play and be responsible, not really put your team at risk while they're on the ice, then that's a win. And we saw guys like Jonah Gadjovich and AJ Greer kind of grab some spots. So there were times in the Panthers lineup last year during the playoffs when they did sit out and the team wasn't quite as effective. Paul Maurice went back to those guys, and they really were a big part of helping them push towards the final and ultimately winning their back-to-back Stanley Cup. So Gadjovich's been a good fit there, good find for them. Bill Zito's specialty seems to be finding players with value and getting these guys that may not be performing at a higher level on other teams, or just bargain finds, if you will. They seem to have done that a lot during the Bill Zito era with the Panthers. I mean, look at some of them are making more money now, but even look at Carter Verhaeghe's a prime example of that. He was there on a cheaper contract for a couple of years, becoming a superstar as a member of that team. They've done it. Evan Rodriguez is a typical example of that too. He's obviously on a pretty bargain contract. They got Forsling on waivers. Nico Mikkola came in again, cast away from another team. These guys were the players that other teams passed on. In the case of Forsling, it's not just the team that put him on waivers. The entire team or league around them could have grabbed him, and they chose not to. So, they just seem to have this eye for talent when players are able to be signed for bargain deals, and they're just everybody that buys in to their way of playing and everything just seem to have success there. And Jonah Gadjovich, to me, is just a very prime, typical example of that. So good on him to get a 2-year extension. Now, as I mentioned, NHL Player Safety Department had issued some fines based on last night's activity. We saw Utah Mammoth defenseman Ian Cole be fined $2,500 for what they're calling a dangerous trip on Predators forward Steven Stamkos. And the Vancouver Canucks defenseman Tyler Myers has been fined $2,500 for what they're referring to as a slash on Connor McDavid. But he basically pitchforked him, in a sensitive area. It was a pretty intense game between the Oilers And the Canucks, Evander Kane was getting into it, of course, with his old team as well. There's no love lost. I mean, I know we have the Battle of Alberta, but Vancouver-Edmonton is becoming a more heated rivalry. Of course, we saw them have a playoff series a couple of years ago. I'm sure that adds a little bit to it as well. But I know, like, Myers, when he went after McDavid, like, that was like for absolutely nothing. It was just to kind of stir things up, I think. Obviously, they know how good McDavid is, and we're targeting him, which, you can understand to a certain degree, but there was no need to go as far as what he did. It was kind of dumb in my opinion. But yeah, obviously a few fines handed out for last night's activity. As I mentioned, we had a bunch of more of young players having impacts on their teams and scoring first NHL goals. Obviously, one of the more, I guess you could call it a little bit of a bizarre goal. Matthew Shea, the first overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft of the New York Islanders, got his first NHL goal last night. It almost looked like a scene out of like the Mighty Ducks movies or something. But of course, he was ecstatic. He's playing such a big role for that team already. Just in his first few NHL games, and he was playing I think he played 26 minutes. Like, it's pretty crazy how important he's become to them so quickly. I made a prediction when I did my prediction video before the season started that before the end of the year, Matthew Shea would be playing big minutes and would be their best defenseman. And we're only a couple games in. I think he might already be there, which is good for him in a way, but kind of sad in a sense for the rest of the squad. But yeah, I think Matthew Shea is going to be a real threat for the Calder Trophy. It seemed like everybody and their dog was betting on Ivan Demidov in Montreal, and he's a really good player too, and I expect him to have a good season. He has started a little bit slow, 1 assist in 3 games, but I mean, not that he hasn't played like poorly. Like, I mean, I've seen a good amount of those games he's played in, and like he's looked pretty good. Like, still, offensively doing well. Hasn't led to a lot of points, but that doesn't mean he's playing badly, right? But interesting to see when the season's over how all this plays out. Sam Rinzel, defenseman for the Blackhawks, also got his first NHL goal last night. What I would refer to as a surprise high first round pick for the Penguins. Ben Kindle of the Penguins scored his first NHL goal last night, and Minnesota Wild defenseman and multiple time national champion, University of Denver, Zeev Bouillon, also scored his first NHL goal as well. So lots of that been going on the last few days here as the season's underway. Nice to see these kids getting their feet wet and becoming, getting acclimated. But some of these guys have a real potential to be stars around the NHL. Now, a bunch of injury updates and other moves here affecting rosters. The Carolina Hurricanes might be without defenseman Jacob Slavin. That would be a big blow. He did leave the last game injured, still being evaluated, so we don't know about missing time or where things stand, but obviously concerned there. The Ottawa Senators have confirmed that defenseman Tyler Kleven will be back, make his season debut tomorrow as they have their home opener scheduled against the Nashville Predators. Kleven did miss the first 2 games of the season. Road trip to Florida where the Sens split the road trip, picking up a win in Tampa and a loss against the Panthers. But getting Kleven back will be huge. The third pair of Sabrango and Matt Paolo have struggled. I hope to see Jordan Spence also make his season debut and get something changed up. Now, Drake Batherson, who was expected to probably play tomorrow, might not. When they went on the road trip, the belief was that Batherson would probably be back before Kleven, but that might not be the case. Drake is very likely going to play this week, but just listening to him speak to the media, it's not a guarantee he plays tomorrow. He's still kind of working through some things to be ready, and he might be targeting Wednesday. So we'll see about that. The Rangers defenseman Carsten Soucy is officially on IR. We talked in yesterday's video that he had a scary crash into the boards and left the game, didn't return. He has officially been added to injury reserve now. The Avalanche too have recalled the young defenseman Jack Auger due to the Samuel Girard injury that we discussed yesterday. He's now out week to week. Another debut coming up here. Toronto Maple Leafs will be having Easton Cowan make his debut in their next game. Cowan is also set to play a top 6 role Looks like he's going to get a chance to play on the line with Austin Matthews and Matthew Nyes, which would be a great spot for him. There was a lot of speculation going towards the end of camp that he might grab a role in the fourth line, but it's like, is that really the best way to get him acclimated to the NHL and set him up for success? I think he needs to be in a more of an offensive role for that to happen. Looks like they're going to move Bobby McMahon down in the lineup, and Cowan will slot in on the top line by the looks of things. So that's a good opportunity for him to not only get into the lineup, make his debut, but to have a chance to play with those guys just, I think, creates a more of an opportunity for success. We'll see. We know that there's going to probably be a little bit of a revolving door on that third winger spot there on the top line. You get Matthews and Nyes will probably stick together a lot, but the third member of that unit could change. We could see Domi, we could see Michelli, we could see some other guys as they try to, work out the kinks for the season and kind of solidify a first line. So Cowan will have his opportunity coming up soon. The Philadelphia Flyers today also recalled defenseman Emil Andrea and sent down Dennis Gilbert, who had previously cleared waivers. The New Jersey Devils today also confirmed that veteran forward Evgeny Dadonov is going to be out for some period of time as well. We don't have a definitive timeline, but he has been moved to injured reserve. He does have a fracture in his hand, so he's going to miss, I would think, at least a few weeks, but we'll have to wait and see on that front. Now, we also got word from Elliot Friedman and his latest reports that the Calgary Flames appear to be in the market for a goaltender. And we're not talking about replacing Dustin Wolf, who just signed a long-term contract recently. I think he's got the number one job solidified and holding down here pretty good for Calgary. They're pretty content with him being their starter for the foreseeable future. But the backup spot is certainly an area of concern, you could say, for the team. They did part ways with Dan Vladar during the offseason, who opted to sign elsewhere to get more of an opportunity to play instead of being more of a, somebody who he knew if he stayed in Calgary that he'd be behind Wolf and not getting a lot of opportunity. So, it made sense for Vladar to go with a team like the Flames, or for leave the Flames to go to a team like the Flyers, where he could get a lot more opportunity to play. So that left internally, you got either Devin Cooley or Ivan Prosvetov. Now, neither of those goalies really had a fantastic preseason and training camp. Right now, Devin Cooley is in that spot. Prosvetov was placed on waivers and assigned to the minors. So again, it's kind of a difficult situation to say how this is going to work out. I don't know how quickly the Flames are going to figure something out here. But the belief, according to Elliott, is that they are working on making a goalie trade to try to solidify the backup spot. It likely could mean that either Cooley or Prosvetov will be either included in the deal or traded in a separate move, because they don't need to really add another goalie to the mix. They need to try to find a way to upgrade. So the belief is that the Flames and GM Craig Conroy are having plenty of conversations around the league, looking for any opportunities that might be out there to bring in another goalie that could upgrade that position. And like I said, it might not be a goalie for goalie trade. It could be, or it could be a situation where they might have to use another asset, whether it be a prospect or, a mid-round pick or something to that, liking to see where things go. But they definitely aren't quite comfortable with their goaltending tandem and will like to find a way to make it a little bit stronger. Now, another article we want to look at, The Athletic, in writer Peter Baugh, who covers the New York Rangers, talking about some very tough decisions that might have to be made in the Big Apple this year. Now, we talked in yesterday's video about the possibility of Artemi Panarin maybe leaving the Rangers and heading to the Florida Panthers. Now, a lot of that would depend, like I said in the video, around the Rangers' performance as a team this year. Clearly, if the Rangers are trending towards being a playoff team, then maybe they don't make a move like that. However, as Ball writes in the article, which makes a lot of sense here, the Rangers do have a bit of an aging core. I mean, this is a team that really kind of was going through a rebuild not really all that long ago, but really accelerated the rebuild, especially with the signing of Artemi Panarin, which is coming up now on the 7th year. So he's in the final year of his contract. We already saw and heard and talked about the reports that the Rangers brass did approach Panarin about extending, who's going to be 34 years old here shortly, but on a team-friendly discounted contract, which he did not seem interested in. He kind of rejected the idea, was what we were told at that time. Now, it doesn't mean they can't re-engage and, maybe have something else work out here during the year. But we also know that Panarin has a lot of say in where he goes, has protection. So if he does leave the Rangers, it's going to be a couple of things. One, the Rangers season isn't going great. And secondly, he's the speculation is he might want to go to a team like Florida if they would take him, because, well, really, they're going for a third championship. There's the whole Barkov situation. They're going to probably, if Barkov can't come back, which is the expectation right now, I would fully expect them to make a move to try to add a star player to make them stronger going into the playoffs. So whether that's Panarin or somebody else like Malkin or another guy, we'll have to wait and be seen here. But Panarin, like I said, he's going to be 34 years old, and they have some older players around him, especially in the forward group. You've got JT Miller, the new captain, on a fair bit of term on his contract. Mika Zibanejad, they're not like old players, but they're an older team now. They have enough guys that are, getting up there a little bit, that if they don't get to the point here that they need to maybe add a little bit more star power on the younger side of it, this team could get older in a hurry. Now, if you look at Alexis Lafreniere, he's still younger, but he hasn't really played at a star player kind of level, right? You got Will Cooley, who's still, maybe we could call him a budding star. He had a good year last year. Can he build upon that? How high is his ceiling? We're still kind of, trending to see what that is, right? So, they have some younger talent, but how much of that younger talent's going to elevate to be able to replace some of these star guys? You get Trocheck, you got Miller, you got Zibanejad, you got Panarin. A big chunk of that top six is getting older. So to re-sign Panarin at his age, it's not completely unreasonable, but unless you're going to do a shorter term, 2-3 years at a lower number than what he's making now, it comes with a lot more risk. At what point will Father Time win that battle and he starts slowing down? That's what you don't know. So you don't want to end up in a situation where, let's say you sign Panarin for 5 or 6 years and you give him $10 million or something crazy. Because based on how he played last year and most recently, you could probably make an argument that he might still be worth that. But will he be in 2, 3, and 4 years? That's, how many years of that contract is going to look bad and be a cap negativity dragging down what you can do as a team. So there's all these decisions that need to be made. And clearly, maybe moving on from Panarin might be something that we actually see. And it could be the result of the fact that they decide that signing him, depending on what he wants for a new contract, is too much risk. Or maybe they're not having a great season and they decide that, we need to find a way to bring in we need to replace some younger talent on this roster. So could they target a guy like a Jason Robertson or a Marty Necas? We know Robertson in Dallas has mutual interest to get something done. But again, like we said throughout the entire offseason, they don't have a deal yet. Until they do, he's going to be a name that pops up in rumors because you don't know what his future is going to hold. And secondly, I can see a scenario that it's going to be challenging to sign Robertson to a contract that's going to satisfy him and the team. Clearly, they're not going to want to go too close or above Mikko Rantanen. I think they're going to say Rantanen is our best, most talented forward. Nobody on this team is going to make more than him right now. And you've also got, a case with Robertson that you're going to have some other players that are coming due for some big money contracts too. You've got some younger guys. You got obviously Wyatt Johnson got signed. You got, Harley. You've got Heiskanen. You got Ottinger. A lot of these guys have deals. They don't all do yet. You got to look at say, okay, who's going to need money coming up here in a longer term deal in the next couple of years? I'm not saying that signing Robertson's impossible. It's not, but it is not as clear cut, and it's a little tricky. And a lot of it's going to boil down to what Robertson will sign for, right? We've heard that there was a lot of exploring in the offseason about what's his market, so they know if they do decide they need to trade him, what could they look at for return. And they also know that, looking at what other contracts have been done, and they've had conversation with him about an extension on what that contract might look like if he stays. And so far, nothing has been done either way. They didn't trade him. They didn't sign him. So we're kind of in limbo here. Now, with Natchez, I've heard some reports as much as the last couple of days. I think it was Pierre LeBrun talking about he thinks Natchez and the Avalanche are going to get a deal done. Now, I know some of the local media are not as sure on that front. Again, looking at the Avalanche, reluctance to pay Rantanen, which has led to his trade. You've got Cale Makar's looming extension is going to be massive as well. So again, looking at what they got to pay Makar here short term, and what they didn't want to pay Rantanen, do they want to pay Natchez that? Have they changed their tune on that? What if Natchez has a phenomenal start to the year? His price is only going to go up. It just seems like it could be a challenge. I'm sure there's mutual interest, and that's fine and dandy, but getting it done is not the same as just having mutual interest. So, I think Robertson might be the better, more likely scenario if we did see a move for the Rangers. But, could it be, foreseeable? Neither one of those guys absolutely have to be traded. Robertson, for example, he's still going into the last year of being an RFA. So that could possibly, if it is a move that we see, could be into next offseason. So, could we see a scenario where Panarin doesn't return, and maybe that's the big move we see between the Rangers and the Dallas Stars, as early as, May, June or something like that. It could be sooner too. You just don't know. But at the end of the day, we could see some major star players kind of shifting teams here as all their teams are in, combination of, not terrible cap situations, but, needing cap space, looking at the long-term thing, their desire to pay some of these guys what they want, and just the overall team, the direction, if you will. So hard to say where things go, but could we see a blockbuster deal where Panarin leaves the Rangers, lands in Florida, and a guy like Jason Robertson ends up with the Rangers instead? I think it's a possibility, but again, it's hard to say. There's lots of games to be played. A lot of these decisions are going to be based on how these teams are doing as well. And since it's so early, we don't know how those results are going to go. It's a little bit harder to peg, but it's going to be interesting storylines, I think, to kind of watch and monitor throughout the early part of the regular season. I do think that this is going to be a season where we see more activity a little bit earlier between the Olympic break and the short term afterwards, getting to the trade deadline. I think we're going to see teams not waste a lot of time. If they need a move, I suspect, November could be a busy month, or in the early part of December. I don't think teams are going to be waiting around quite as long this year before they pull the trigger, but that's just a gut feeling on my part. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.